AJ Humphrey, and we're back on Elephant in the Room today. I'm with Bobby Cleveland. We have a special guest. So we have Russell Fincher, and Russell has been a school teacher. He's currently a preacher. He also works with a group of young men there in Push County. I think, Russell, what is that you're working on?
I work with Lyft. It used to be Little Dixie, but the new grant I'm in is Strong Fathers of Push County, and we're working with men, trying to make them better fathers. Working with a national program, 24/7 Dad, and trying to get fathers more involved with their kids and in the home life.
Yeah. Hey, you're currently still a pastor, though, right?
Yeah, pastor at Faithful Baptist Church.
You had to quit teaching, though?
Say again?
Did you have to quit teaching?
I did. In the state of Oklahoma, if you have any kind of felony, no matter what it is, in fact, it just happened about last week. They made me relinquish my teaching certificate.
Well, I brought a stick in case Bob goes to cussing and gets out of hand. So, Bob, we got the preacher on today, so do not cuss, Bob.
Okay.
I'll out of hand sometime, okay?
Hold it down, JJ.
Well, today what we're talking about, and I got a little mouse sitting over here, so if y'all see me throw my stick, I'm watching a mouse. I'm going to kill a mouse. But here's the deal we're on today, because Russell has a very unique story. A lot of y'all have heard this story before, but we're going to go ahead and jump right into it today, because this is worth hearing. And so Russell, one of the big deals, Russell had his home raided by the ATF, showed up, black ops, all blacked out, ready to go, hollering and screaming in front of his kids, handcuffed him, searched his house, didn't find anything, right, Russell? I mean, they didn't find anything at your house.
There wasn't anything that, and I kept asking, I said, did you find anything that wasn't connected with any kind of case or stolen? And again, I thought, well, maybe I had bought a gun that from an individual that could have been stolen. I wasn't sure exactly what was going on. Was honestly in shock. And when they called, we were actually fixing to go to a gun show in Tulsa. We were about halfway packed up, and a guy called because I had an ammo shop in Clayton, but I ran a gun shop out of my house, and we basically just did gun shows. And he called and said, "Hey, when are you going to open up your ammo?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not. We're going to a gun show." And he hung up. And about 10 minutes later, no, probably 5 minutes later, the same number calls me back and said, "Hey," and he told me his name, "We're with the ATF. We need to speak with you before you leave today." And I'm like, okay. And I had a weird feeling. I'm like, okay, why would he make this story up that he needed ammunition? And so I had this bad feeling. I said, well, if one car shows up, it's just they're wanting to talk to me about, a book or a gun or whatever. And it was about 5 to 7 vehicles come up my driveway. And I'm standing out on the front porch because I thought it was one of the officers or agents that I had been dealing with. And they all get out, AR-15s, pointing at me, saying, turn around. They come cuff me, pull me off the deck. And again, I'm like, "Hey, my son is in the house. Let me go get him." And they're like, "No, you're not going back in the house because you could go get a gun or whatever." And my fear was my son, he was 13 at the time. He's listening with his headphones, and someone comes in with an AR-15 in his house. I could see him running or scared, and I was afraid they might shoot him, really. And they brought him out, and he was petrified. I mean, tears in his eyes, and he's like, "Dad, what's going on?" I'm like, I don't know, son. I really don't. And part of me was thinking, they went to the wrong place. They're at the wrong address. So that was, I think that was June 16th.
Let me ask you something. So we get a lot of calls in on this, and I've been asked 100 times what you did wrong. What targeted them to look at you? Why did they start, targeting on you? So what caused the ATF? Because a lot of people think, well, he had to do something. He had to do something wrong. So why did the ATF pick you out of all the people in the United States that has a federal firearms license?
Well, so, and I'll just say this. So before this ever happened to me, about 6 months before, one of the guys that I did gun shows with, he lives in Tulsa. They raided his house. And I mean, in fact, if I had not known his situation, I would have thought that's crazy. In fact, I didn't believe him when he first told me. And they literally told him the reason that we are coming after you is because you sell more guns at gun shows in Oklahoma. And they said, we want you shut down. We want to shut down gun shows in Oklahoma. His case ended up, he was going to go to trial, and they at the last second dropped all charges, which that's what I was hoping with me. So what they told me is that a gun that I had purchased had end up, and they do what they call a trace. And so any paperwork, if you've ever done paperwork on a gun, bought it from a gun shop, they have that serial number. And even if you've gotten rid of that gun, it goes back to the paperwork. Now, they say they don't have a gun ledger or whatever, but that's basically what they're using for. And I can't even remember what gun it was, but they said it was wasn't used in a crime, but it was taken from someone, a criminal. And when they arrested him, they traced that gun, and it came back to me. And that's how this got started, is what they told me.
A good example of that, when I was probation pro officer, if you're on probation pro, you can't have weapons. And so,
sure,
again, we've had to seize lots and lots of weapons. So again, gun didn't do nobody shot anybody, nobody killed anybody. Right. We just seized those weapons. It could have been as simple as that the gun you sold, somebody else sold to a felon, and that, or it could be they've got picked up with weed and there's a gun in the car. I mean, we can come up with 1,000 scenarios of how you could sell a gun to Bob. Bob sells a gun to me. Now I get arrested for marijuana and the gun's in the vehicle. That has nothing to do. So you're saying the way that it come about, it wasn't anything illegal on you. It was the gun was found in the action of a crime or something like that. Wasn't used for a crime, but was found in the action.
Well, and that was my first question. I said, you're saying I sold a gun to a felon? And they're like, no, a gun that you owned at one point ended up in I said, have you ever been to a gun show? That gun could have changed hands 10 times in one day. And so, and they, of course, they're like, well, but you can't sell a gun. And I said, well, I'm a private individual. And the way the law reads, if I've had it for, I think it's either 18 months or 12 months, and it's my gun, but it came out of my books or whatever, then I can sell it to an individual without a background check, even at being an FFL. But again, their whole thing was, and the ATF tried to pull a fast one and tried to say, well, if you're any individual and you're trying to sell a gun, you're going to either have to be an FFL or take that gun to an FFL, because they wanted a paper trail for every gun. And of course, the people stood up and said, we can't do that. And again, I think with the Trump administration, I don't think that's ever going to happen. But their whole idea is they wanted more control. And I'm telling you, the ATF, there is no accountability for them.
Well, let me ask you this, Russell. Have you ever seen the article? Correct me if I'm wrong. I know me and you talk and have worked on all this, but I pulled up an article, and I'm thinking you're the one who gave it to me. I'm not sure. that Biden even got up during a speech and announced that he was coming after FFLs, federal firearm licenses. And I was saying the other day, maybe to you, that it went up 75%, went up 275%.
Yeah.
I think not 75%, 275% more. That it increased. Now, you guys listening, 275% increase in arrest on FFLs. Now, that's under the Biden, and that was shortly after Biden come out and made that speech. He made that speech, and bam, the arrest started happening. And so, again, it looks to me like you're kind of in that net of what Biden was trying to do, is take out the FFLs and shut it down. I think their purpose was to try to shut down gun shows. That's what I think.
Now, have you had any contact with any of our state senators or congressmen, or even in the House?
Yeah.
Or senators?
Yeah. Of course, JJ has been, I didn't really know JJ when I first was introduced to him.
Well, you're lucky.
I had voted for him several times, but I'd never met him. And when I met him, he said, "I don't know if you're right or wrong, but the way I look at it, you're in a big hole, and I'll get down the hole with you back to back, and we'll fight our way out of it." And again, I know JJ he's in politics, but he's not a politician. And
I said, I'll take that as a compliment.
It is a compliment. I talked to one of my, the state senator. I called him and he asked me, he said, "Do you have an attorney?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "Then I can't help you, because once you have an attorney, politicians can't talk to you," which that's not true at all.
No,
that just means I don't want to get involved. And again, I had reached out to, probably other than JJ, Josh Burkeen was pretty involved in my case, as far as on the lower level. Because when that story came out, again, I went to Second Amendment Foundation, and they did a story and they released it. And people in Oklahoma were like, "Hey, we need to do something. The ATF's getting out of control." And my attorney said, when he talked to the ATF, they said, "You've got to shut him up." And my attorney said, "Why?" And they're like, "Well, he's talking to the media." And he goes, "So you took his Second Amendment right, and now you're trying to take his First Amendment right." Well, they didn't like that either, but I mean, he was right. But they were mad that I was coming out and saying, "Listen, there's no control there. It's just, I mean, again," and they told me, "We may have broke state laws, but we don't answer to state laws. We can do whatever we want. We're the ATF." And JJ has dealt with them. He knows, he's had a conversation with one of the top guys, and they pretty much said, "We don't answer to you."
Pretty cocky. They're pretty cocky.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Russell, so that our listeners know. They actually got a hold of you and actually come to ask and want to come out to your house, and you let them in your house, right?
Oh yeah. So the way it started was, they came to my house I applied to be an FFL. They come to your house, they do an interview, they do a background check. And I had been, maybe a year, maybe a little bit more, been an FFL. And they had told me about this gun that had come back on a trace. And they said, "We're just going to do, an inventory, and they did that. And I called them. I said, "Hey, is everything good?" I let them in my house. They were here, I don't know, a couple hours. One of the guys actually worked with my dad. My dad's a retired state highway patrol. He was a highway patrol. He actually knew my dad. So it felt like, everything was good. We were at a good conversation. And I called them. I'm like, "Is everything good? Do I, am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong?" And they're like, "No, everything's fine. Just operate as normal." And again, that was when we were fixing to do this gun show, and they show up.
Well, now they even went through your inventory and went through your computer. You let them have access to anything they wanted, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In fact, looking back on it, and again, you have all these people telling you, "Oh, if I'd have done this, I'd have shot my way out." And I'm like, "Yeah, there's a guy in Arkansas that did that, and they
Absolutely.
killed him." And we were mirror images of each other. He was exactly my age at the time, and he wasn't an FFL. He was just trading, buying, selling guns as an individual, and that's what I was before. And the ATF said, "Hey, if you're going to continue to do guns, you're going to have to become an FFL." So that's what I did. I did what they asked me to do.
That right there is not true. That's not a
Well, that's the ATF's version.
yeah. Well,
And again, and so that's kind of what brought me to this point.
well, I mean, in talking about that guy there in Arkansas, because it is similar type. I mean, very similar. And I mean, here's this guy that works for the airport that is a very highly respected individual. And, when you actually study his case a little bit, and I've talked to people and studied that because it kind of happened at the same time, I was really interested. So I started checking it out. And there actually is video of them showing up. So here they had this search warrant that they could go execute. They show up like in a Walmart parking lot early in the morning.
Yeah.
They're all there. They're all talking. And somebody says, well, he's not home. So they disperse and wait and come back earlier to when he is home. So they go out there to catch him at home. They didn't need to catch him at home. They could have searched without him being there.
Sure.
So, I mean, when you look at it, the way they did, and I mean, they went in, if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to go back and look at it. It's been a while. They went in like full, blown, cut his electricity and did all kinds of stuff, if I'm not mistaken, like a full-blown op, I mean, it was insane what they're doing to this guy who basically, I mean, they had nothing on him. Now, I don't know if y'all guys have seen here lately, his wife, the spouse of this guy that got killed, is actually suing the ATF. Boy, I hope she wins.
She's going to get a bunch.
And
that, again, that could have been me. And again, if I'd have done what some of my buddies were like, I'd never let them in my house. They'd have to get every bullet, every gun. But the thing was,
wouldn't they have to have a search warrant?
They did have a search warrant,
but
it wasn't.
Yeah,
they did have a search warrant.
But Bob, as a law enforcement officer, what are you basing the criteria of the search warrant? Now, when you leave a search warrant, when you execute a search warrant, and I know this because I've executed a bunch of them. When you execute a search warrant, I had to leave you the search warrant of what we were looking for, what evidence, why, who told us what, who's the informant. All of that has to be included on that search warrant. And so again, I called after it's already been served. This should be a public record, should be in the court. I called them and said, I want a copy of that search warrant. Now here's a state representative calling for a public record that should have been given to Russell at the time of the search. And guess what? They gave him the front cover, front paper, but they didn't give him the rest of the search warrant. No, you're supposed to get the whole darn search warrant. The whole thing is the search warrant.
So when they come and search your house, they have to list out what they're looking for. They just can't go in there, and look for anything and everything.
Well, the way you get around that, Bob, especially like on this, you say, we're going to look for ammunition or other items used in a gun, triggers, gun parts, whatever. Now, what happened?
Gun related, yeah.
Well, and the reason you do that, you find something small, because that way you can look that gives you access to the entire. But if you're going to search a building off the property, you have to list that. Now generally anything in the curtilage, so the yard area is apt to search. But again, here's the deal: if they're cooperating, if I've already been in your house if I've already been allowed to search your house, if I've already been allowed to search your computer, then why do I need to come search your house? Why do I need to have a search warrant when you've already volunteered and I can go right back out there and get you to volunteer again?
Because of intimidation.
Oh,
and they told me, they said, this is shock and awe, because when we come with, there were 14, 15, 16 agents there with AR-15s. And again, like you say, I've always let them in my house. I never denied them. I never gave, there wasn't any one thing they asked that I didn't give them. But, and so it was about a 9-hour process that they were here at my place.
Yeah.
And here's
the thing. They've done pulled your record at that point. If they're doing the raid and they're doing all this, they've already pulled your record. You got no record. You're a school teacher. You're a preacher. They did a background check on you. You've let them search your house. You've let them search your computer. You've been highly cooperative. Do we need to do a full black op raid, 16 officers, guns drawn, tear down your video equipment? And again, that's a big deal to me, is that they don't want you having an actual recording of what actually happened. So they take down your recording so that they've got their recording, and then you can't tell what, again, you don't get access to anything they've got.
Do you have the right to record it?
I do, but they took it down before they came into my house, or actually I had come out, they handcuffed me, they go get my son. And I noticed when we were out on the porch, they took all my video equipment. They took it off.
Equipment, yeah, your surveillance.
They put it upside down so it would video nothing.
But now, Russell, let me ask you a question. After they got done with everything, they seized half your weapons. Is that right?
Well, I don't know. It was 63 guns that they took. Well, it's been a minute, 63 or 65. I can't remember.
Right.
They didn't take all my guns. I had a lot of guns. And again, I probably had 80 guns that were my gun show that were on my books. And then as an individual, I probably had more than that, because I'm a collector. I've had guns that my grandpa gave me when I was in second grade. I'm an avid hunter, so I had all kinds of guns. There were no rhyme or reason. They didn't take the guns that were on my books. They took my personal inventory, and I wish I'd have had audio, but obviously they took that down, or video. They're in my safe room going through my guns and going, "Hey, come in here. I've never seen this gun before." And the guy's like, "Let me hold it. I've never held one." And again, the ATF's different than, say, a sheriff or police department. When a sheriff or police department, they take things of evidence, it goes to an evidence locker and it comes to trial and they bring it out. The ATF, when they take it, it's no longer yours. It could be in Mexico. It could be in their house. And I honestly believe there's probably a few of my guns in agents' houses.
Bob, you remember us talking to that guy on, it wasn't Fast and Furious, what was it? Wide Receiver. So they had another whole deal, just like Fast and Furious. People don't know that, but they had a deal called Wide Receiver. It's identical. They were selling guns to the cartel, and it's ATF selling guns to the Mexican cartel through one of these informants, or one of the, I think it's a little firearms deal. But yeah, there's a good chance your guns Fast and Furious or Wide Receiver right on out to Arizona.
Well, and honestly, one of my fears is that one of those guns that they took from me could end up in Mexico, and a cartel or whatever kill a federal agent, and they could say, "Oh, that was your gun," even though they had possession of it.
Feds guns. That's Feds guns. I
know, but you know how they would spend that, though.
Oh yeah.
Now,
here's the reason I brought that up, Russell. Now, Bob, hang with me and see if you agree with me here, what I'm saying. How do you go in? Now, I've executed a lot of search warrants. So if we went in and we're going to seize your guns for whatever reason. say we find dope. Now here's what people need to know. If I seize anything, it's because you're a felon and you can't have a gun, which didn't apply to you at that time.
Nope.
Or we find drugs, or we find something illegal. We find stolen guns, stolen property. Okay, now we seize all these guns. All right, but it's got to be something related. So if you're selling dope, we can say, well, you got guns in possession of firearm while selling drugs. Again, that's felony. We can seize all of this stuff. But you know what I can't do? I can't go through your guns and go, I like this one, seize that one. I like that one, seize that one. But we're going to leave you another 100 or so. How do you do that? How do you justify either you seize them all or you seize none of them? How can you seize 63 of the better guns?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's insane. That right there is that was the first red flag when I was first talking to you. That was the first red flag of that don't make no sense. That is illegal. That is an illegal seizure because one, they did not charge you with the crime. People need to understand that. So if I go to the home and there is no crime, how do I seize a person's property over willy-nilly? We're going to seize this and see if we can't find something pin on it. You can't do that.
Again,
you can't do that.
I taught history for 10 years, and a famous line from Stalin was, show me the man and I will show you the crime.
Right.
And I believe that's exactly what happened to me. They're like, we'll take this guy.
That's what I'm saying. They didn't even have a crime yet. And they went down there to make certain, try to find a crime. But now, Russell, correct me if I'm wrong. They mailed you back a list of those guns and told you they would give you $10 per gun when some of those guns were worth $300-$400.
Well, and basically the way it's worded is it basically they had each gun value $10. And my first attorney, which honestly I didn't think, I thought this was a mistake. Everything was, they went to the wrong person. This first attorney that I got, he was a Second Amendment guy out of Texas. And he said that basically says if they lose it or something, that's what they'll give you if they can't replace it. And which to me is horrible, and now one of the attorneys later said, well, they just have to put a dollar figure on it. That's not really what they value it. But I don't know. That's what they sent me. It said $10. And I asked the question.
Since JJ sent out his letter, I don't know how long it's been, just a few days maybe. Have you had any kind of anybody from the House, the Senate, the Congress contacted you?
Well, I reached out to Senator James Lankford. I've known James for over 30 years, and JJ's been working with me on trying to get a letter in front of Trump, and also on Fox News, the newest Attorney General said something to the effect of the ATF just a few years ago was trying to make gun owners criminals. And now we're going to return the ATF to arresting criminals and leaving gun owners alone. And that's when I called JJ. I said, we need to send Pam Bondi a copy of my case because I'm the guy she's talking about. Now, she may not know me, but that's exactly what I feel like. That, again, my record, there's nothing. I had a speeding ticket about 30 years ago.
Well, did Lankford contact you?
Well, so I called and left a message. Wasn't really expecting a whole lot. And on Friday, James called me back. And it's hard to know because I know these politicians, they get insulated. But I know that two people from his office, either me or someone else, had spoke to them. But James said he'd never heard about my case. And again, whether he's being honest, I want to believe him because I think sometimes those people probably say, he's too busy. This is something he doesn't need to worry about. But I actually got to talk to him. He didn't make any promises, but he did say, I know you, I trust you, And again, he made mention of this goes back to the executive order that Biden did where he targeted FFLs. So I said, so you know about that? He goes, oh yeah, we're well aware of it. So he did say that Trump is fixing to do another group of pardons, and he goes, he likes to do it in groups. And I know Justin Jackson, good friend of mine, good friend of JJ's. He had reached out to a couple of like Burkeen and them, and they said, listen, when Trump first got in there, they said, we'll look at Fincher's case, but we want to do the Sixth Amendment January 6th pardons first.
Yeah.
And I understood that, but they said, wait till that's done. Well, as soon as that was done, I was like, okay, I'm not waiting around. I mean, to me, I want someone that I think if Trump heard my case and knew the kind of person I was, he would say, this is a travesty that's happened to him.
Well, at least they could call you, contact you.
Right.
But I know that, for example, he could have talked to a staff member and the staff didn't take it serious. They're taking much of it.
And I think that's what happened. That's what I guess happened.
He would not have passed it on to them. I think that's wrong, but that may be what happened.
Right.
Well, I can tell you where I'm at on that. I don't care what's happening in the past. He knows it now. What are you going to do? Okay, so maybe you didn't know it. Maybe you did. We can argue now. We can argue. Yeah. Y'all got y'all's belief. I got mine. But here's the deal. I don't really care about the past. What are you going to do now, Mr. Lakeford? Because guess what? You are a very powerful person. You do have the ability to get that in front of Pam Bondi's staff. You got the ability to get that in front of Kash Petal's staff. You got the ability to get it in front of Donald Trump's staff. We know you probably can't hand deliver it right to them. Maybe you can even do that. You could even hand carry it to those individuals and make them aware. But at the end of the day, let's get it in front of, I gave you an entire package that shows that these ATF officers, agents, not only did they do illegal, treat Russell in a bad way, did they go way overboard, but what they did was illegal. It's illegal here in Oklahoma. They extorted him. They stole his guns. They had no legal right to seize those guns. They stole his guns. Now he's had to get rid of all the guns. They need to return those guns, or they need to, and some of those guns can't be replaced. Some of the value on those guns, I've got guns my dad has. I've been offered money. I got offered money for some of my father-in-law's guns.
Did he get tried? Did you go to court?
So they had a grand jury, and the first grand jury could not convict me. And my attorney said that they basically, his words was jury shopped, and they basically picked another grand jury, and they convicted me or indicted me, I guess. And so when I got indicted, and again, when this first happened, my attorney said, I've never had this happen, but they want to make a plea deal before you're ever arrested, or they offered.
The grand jury indicted you. They didn't say you was guilty. I mean, they're just because they indicted you shouldn't mean that that's not your case.
No.
Did you go to court?
No, I did not.
Well, how can the schools deny you?
Well, okay, so I took a plea deal, and again, it was not an easy. It was very hard for me because to me, I pled guilty.
Hold on, Russell. Hold on. So let's get this straight so all of our listeners understand this. They seize his weapons without any probable cause, without reason. Yeah. They take him to a grand jury. The grand jury does not indict him. Now, I thought it'd be over with at that point. No indictment. But they swing back around and they double back around and go to a second grand jury. I would have thought that was double jeopardy, but it's not because they charged him with a different crime. So if they
and all they have to do is show one more piece of evidence to do a second grand jury.
Right.
Yeah.
So they go around to the second grand jury, and that grand jury indicts him not on all of this other, but on selling ammunition to a felon. Now let's tell the public, you can go in Walmart and be a felon and buy ammo every day. You
Right.
can go into Bass Pro. You can go into all of these gun stores and buy ammo all day long as a felon, and there's nothing they will do with you. Yes, it is illegal, but it's going on all over the place, and nobody even pursues it. They dang sure don't go in and go to Walmart and pursue it. Why not?
No.
You would think that that's a bigger abuser than some guy in Clayton, Oklahoma. Why not go after the big people who sell that? So
well, and I'll just tell you, one of the ATF agents told me, he said, if we could get a felon on you, a preacher and a teacher, and someone that has no record, we can get anyone. And I was thinking, okay, so, and they would tell me things like, so when they were all, there was 12, 13 agents around me when they raided my house, and they're just throwing things at me and saying, it's a federal crime to lie to an agent. And I mean, basically just kind of beating you up here. And my son's right over next door to me. And they're like, I said, so you're telling me I can never sell a personal gun ever again? And one of I'm not going to say his name because I don't want somebody to go after him, but one of the agents said, well, if you had a Benelli shotgun that you wanted to sell, you could sell that. And I'm like, okay, is that in the regulations? And he goes, don't be a smart aleck. And I'm like, no, you're saying that. And he goes, well, you can't sell gangbanger guns, AR lowers. You can't sell Glocks. That's what they're looking for. And I'm like, okay, show me in the ATF regs that I can sell this, but I can't sell that. And of course he couldn't. And he goes, you're just trying to be a smart aleck. And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to, because here's part of with ATF. You'll talk to one agent and he will tell you one story. You'll talk to another one, he'll tell you a totally different story. And what they say, well, that's a gray area. Well, the reason I am here where I'm at is because of the gray area and because of President Biden. Because he put an executive order and put a target on guys like me and said, we're going after them. And again, I know a lot of times people will say, I can't believe you took a plea deal, but I talked to two different attorneys. I talked to Gun Owners of America, which is probably about the only firearms association that I have any respect for. NRA is worthless to me, but they told me, they said, listen, we think we can get you off, but this is how it's going to go down. You're going to lose your trial, but we will pick it up on appeal and you will win. We've had two cases just like yours. One was in Florida. I think like the other one was in Georgia. We got them off. And then they said, but both of them served 5 years in prison before they got released. And the guy said, did they really win? And I said, I don't think so. Not if they spent 5 years in prison. And again, I had a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old. And like when I talked to James Lankford, he said, listen, I know you feel guilty for doing the plea, but you had to protect your family. And, I hope that at some point I get made whole and complete. But at this point, I can't teach because I'm a felon. And in the state of Texas and the state of Arkansas, you can be restored depending on what your charges are. Because they call my crime of selling ammunition to a felon a blue collar crime. It wasn't violent. It wasn't sexual. It wasn't anything like that. But in the state of Oklahoma, it doesn't matter, which I hope that we can change that at some point.
That does need to be changed. But now here's the deal, Russell. Me and you talked about this 100 times, whether to take the plea deal. And I can tell you, I tell everybody, I told him to take the plea deal because, as it stood, was he guilty of the said crime? Yeah, when they run somebody in there with a wire and they set you up to say, sell this ammunition. And again, he probably said something, I'm a felon or something on there so that they could show, well, he knew he was a felon. So it was a set up deal from the whole Jump Street. And again, Russell, and I'm not making excuses because Russell was selling firearms and selling ammunition. So it is the law. But you know how many people, do you know how long I worked for corrections and for investigators and in the law enforcement? I was a law enforcement officer probably 20 plus years. And I worked a case where we found some dope on a guy and he had 444 shells. We were out there with the DEA and a couple other ones. I mean, the guy was, they wanted him bad. He was slinging a lot of dope, but he had 444 shells in his pocket. And I never forget that they charged him with them 444 shells, possession of ammo.
And 5 years prison for each bullet.
Yeah, each bullet. That's what they told me. I said, I don't even feel right. You know what I'm saying? And this was a bad cat. We found dope in there with it. And I was like, I don't even want to pursue that. They pursued it. I didn't want no part of that.
What about Dan Bongino? Did you send something to him?
I never have. I didn't know how to get a hold of him.
JJ sent his letter out. Did you send one to Dan Bongino?
We sent it to Kash Petal, which is the same. We sent it to the FBI.
Is his Kash Petal one from Dan Bongino's another?
Hey, Bob, I'm holding a stick. Look here now. It is the same because neither one of them guys will probably get it. It's going to be somebody at lower look at it and then take it up the chain. That's what we hope. But yes, right. I mean, listen, I called Burking, I've called Mullins, I've called Langford. I sent them all a package to show that we formed, I wrote a probable cause on these guys for extortion, for stealing, for threatening. Because while they were there, they told him, you tell your little buddies, federal firearms buddies, we're coming after them. That's a terroristic threat. They have the ability to carry out.
You're going to send it to Dan Bongino. Bob, he hasn't taken over yet. You can send it to him right now.
Bob, he wasn't even there when I sent that.
I know, but he got a big time show that he could put that on. Talk about it.
Call Langford and say, Langford, get that over there. I know you know Langford. Do you know Langford, Bob?
Yeah.
Are you gonna pick up the phone and call?
And I don't think, no matter what anybody else says, I don't think he would lie to you at all.
No, I don't either. Because I have the utmost respect for Langford, and like I say, I've known him as a youth pastor and a pastor for over 30 years. And what I told him was because I was his campaign manager for Push County when he first ran for Senate, and I voted for him every time, would campaign for him. But I just didn't feel like it was my place to ask him because I felt like he's got way bigger issues than my issue.
No, he got a bigger issue. You're his constituent.
I understand. I understand.
You got a pretty big issue, buddy. I mean, he needs to be getting on this.
Well, and this issue is bigger than you, Russell. This issue
it is
way bigger than you. This is Oklahoma. It is. This is Oklahoma.
Well, and just when I started telling James my story, he said, "Oh, this isn't just about you." And again, I kind of felt like, I mean, he started telling me the executive order, when it happened. I mean, he knew a lot of stuff about it. And so he just didn't know I was involved in it. And so, and again, he didn't make any promises, but I did feel like he heard me. And like I say, I actually physically talked to him. It wasn't like through a surrogate or a handler. And again, I think James will do his part. I'm hoping that people will call their House representatives, their senators, and say, hey, we need to get Russell Fincher in front of President Trump for a pardon. And again, I know a lot of times people say, well, you're not doing any hard crime. You're not even in prison, but I can never be a teacher until I get pardoned. And the only way federal crimes can be removed is from a presidential pardon. If it was
Biden released people, did pardons, people who weren't arrested, who.
Yeah. Well, and like I say,
Preemptive, a preemptive part.
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
I do
That was a family deal.
I want to say something. I want to say something up front. Full disclosure. I may have said some ugly things about Langford in the past on J6, on the border, on some judge stuff. So I have spoken very ugly, and I ain't gonna take it back because that's my opinion. But now, if he would help us on here, I might. You know what I'm saying? Here's where I'm at. If you do something bad, I'm gonna say it. If you do something good, I'm gonna say that. So here's your chance. Here's your one chance, Fancy. Don't let me down. So here's a chance for Mr. Langford to make it up. In my opinion, here is one of his citizens, somebody he knows, a fellow pastor, somebody that he knows Biden set out to try to destroy people and try to take away our Second Amendment rights, and you got caught in the net. And now I will tell you what I think would help more than anything. I think if Bobby Cleveland would call James Langford himself, that would probably be a good deal.
I'm going to call Ed Bongino. I'm not messing Langford.
Hey, Bob, get it done. Get it done. Hey, do you know the numbers? Do you have the numbers to that?
So the switchboard for the U.S. House and the Senate is the same number. It's 202-224-3121. And for Oklahoma, go ahead.
Repeat it. How about, because people might be slow like me.
It's 202-224-3121. And for the state of Oklahoma, we got Representative Hearn, Burkeen, Lucas, Cole, and Bice. And then our senators are Langford and Mullins. And again, I think if some of those people would just say, hey, listen, you need to look into Russell Fincher with the ATF. Again, every little bit could help. And again, JJ, I'm telling you, I'd take a bullet for JJ Humphreys because he stood up for me when no one else would. And I'm not. He's not paying me to say that, but I'm telling you, he's the real deal. And
he really is. I mean, he gets into it. He investigates things. And one thing I found about him, and we working together on different stuff, he doesn't exaggerate. He tells it just like it is. He's not afraid, and he's not going to lie.
Yeah.
He might get rattled up a little bit and throw a cuss word in there.
But he will check it out. But he won't. Like with me, when I find out something on our prisons, well, can you verify it? We got to verify it. We just can't take one person's word for it. We have to verify it. He tells me that all the time.
Yeah,
we verify it. But he's a worker.
Yeah.
Well, I want to tell our listeners something. And again, a lot of times, we come on here and we tell about things that are wrong in the system. We talk about what nobody else wants to talk about. This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. A case that I can't believe more people are gun people, are people that are out there with our gun, Hey, you ain't heard it. I had people I would, in fact, when Russell first started, I was like, I'll get on the phone and get us some help. We get some help. Guess what? Nobody. I called federal people. I called state people. I called everybody, Capitol, you name it. I called them. There ain't no question they got called 100 times. I called them. We came out with this. We went after the AG. I want to tell you, I'm disappointed in AG. He was morally, no courage. He had zero courage. He claims, well, I'm a veteran. Okay, great. My hat's off to you. So you're a war hero. Hats off to you. Now here's your chance to do something pretty easy to do, and you will not even protect Oklahomans. And so I was disappointed, very disappointed. And again, what I'm asking our listeners to do, don't just sit there and listen to this. Get a hold of your state representative, get a hold of your U.S. representative, senators, and tell them, pour it on, mash the gas. Let's get this in front of Dan Bongino. Let's get it in front of Kash Petal. Let's get it in front of Bondi. Let's get it in front of Tom. Let's get it in front of, boy, I almost said Pence. Boy, somebody slapped me silly.
What about OK2A? What did he say about it?
Well, and I don't want to talk bad about people, but he basically said, because at that point, I didn't know exactly what it was going to take, because I was at that point thinking I was going to go to trial. And my attorney said if I went to trial, it was going to be, trying to think what number. It was like $40,000 to $60,000 cash.
Yeah.
And I asked them, would they help? And they're like, no, that's kind of your own fault, is what he basically said. And again, NRA is kind of same way. They talk a big game. And again, I'm not saying that Oklahoma 2A doesn't do things for the state of Oklahoma, but as far as when you got somebody that literally is in the sights and has the full weight of the federal government, and like JJ has always told me, the thing is with the federal government, they're going to take you out in deep waters and they're going to let you drown. And they can, because they got all kinds of money, they got all kinds of resources.
I'd
have to sell my house to pay for the
I'm sure.
We actually had Russell up at an OK2A meeting. We've actually had Russell in front of a whole lot of people, NRA, other groups. Now, there was some legal groups that actually did talk to us, and but nobody stepped up. Nobody tried to help. There's been no effort. And again, we've got a pretty good case. I talked to one of the funniest things is I talked to one of the head ATF guys who is very likable. I will tell you that guy's very likable. Now, there is one we're not mentioning today, and I'd like to take his stick, go over and whap him on the head. And again, I'm not mentioning his name because Russell didn't mention his name. If I did mention his name, I'd call him a mongrel. But anyways, that's what I'd call him, mongrel. But so here's the deal. We just, that ATF supervisor, I was like, well, hey, you got to give me this. No, we ain't got to give you that. Well, you got to give this. Nope, we ain't giving you that. And, and what was even funny when we got off, he said, hey, JJ, can I tell you something? I said, yes, sir, you can. He said, I just want you to know that if I had to pick a representative to represent me, I'd pick you. And I laughed. I said, well, hey, so-and-so. I said, you do know I'm trying to throw your ass in jail, don't you? And he goes, that's why I like you. That's why, hey, he just cocky. I laughed. I was like, hey, you're a funny guy. But I will tell you this. I want to see a chance for us to spin this around. Not only do I want to see Russell Fincher whole with the pardon, I doubt he's ever going to get his guns back, but I'd like to see him get paid. I'd like him to be compensated for those guns, or if they do have some of those guns, especially his family, it's, granddad's guns, things like that. I wish they would be returned. But our main thing, we want a pardon. And the main thing that I want to tell people, if you have an opportunity to talk to your U.S. congressman, we want to see them pursue criminal charges on the ATF. We have a case. They extorted, they stole these weapons. They had no authority. They had a search warrant. They had the authority to come search. I disagree how they got it, because if a judge knew that they'd already been there in search and that he'd already consented to a search of not only his property, but also his computers, I don't think a judge would have found need to have a search. I know they didn't have a whole lot of evidence. They had nothing to hold those guns on, to seize those guns. So that made it legal theft. And so again, it's theft, period. And it's called extortion by government. And again, what they did, they seized his weapons, and then they threatened him with his livelihood to make him plead guilty to a case that was totaled.
And not only that, but they went after my brother, which he works for federal government, builds flight simulators and planes for the federal government. They went after him. They threatened to go after my dad, a retired highway patrol. They're like, well, if you've done this, your dad was a gun owner or a gun dealer. I bet he's broke the laws, and basically just, intimidating people. And here's one thing that people need to realize. So when we first made the plea deal, they were going to return all of my guns back to me. That was the first plea deal. I would plead guilty to selling ammunition to someone that was prohibited, and they would return all my guns. It ended up being that they gave me 15 of my guns that I had to go send to an FFL that I could sell. And I asked my attorney, I'm like, so where are the rest of my guns? And he goes, I'm not sure they know where they're at.
They're in Mexico. They're in Mexico. They done the Fast Furious.
And here was the other thing. Those 15 or 16 guns that they gave back, they didn't even wait till the plea deal was done. The very next week, they took them to my friend that's an FFL and transferred to him. And my friend said, he goes, I think they were afraid they might lose them between when we made the deal. They wanted to get them out of their hands before something happened to them.
I can tell you about where 17 of them are because I went and purchased 17 of them.
Yeah, I know you did. those weren't the ones. Those were ones that were my personal ones. Yeah.
One of the things I think is happening in this.
If you get pardoned, I'll let you come shoot them if you want. You know, there's one really real sleeping in there. I'll let you come shoot
JJ, I was talking.
I'm sorry, Bob. Go ahead.
No, what I'm saying is I think that people are like me. When I've heard about this, I thought, surely this didn't really happen. There's got to be more to the story than this. You know, you had to be selling something, but there's just got to be more to it. And there's really not any more to it. It's like what you said.
Well, and
go ahead.
One of the things that
I think that's the thing you got to look at too, that the way it's come out.
Right. Well, one of the things that they kept asking me at my house is, give us the list of all the drug dealers and gangsters that you're selling guns to. And I'm like, what? And they're like, we know you're selling to the gangsters. We know you're selling to the mob and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And again, they never had any proof of that. They were just throwing stuff out there.
Just trying everything to intimidate you.
And the 63 guns that they took, not one of them had any connection to any crime that they ever charged me with. Not one.
Well, guys, we're already out of time. Unbelievable. An hour has went by, and we could talk about this for another hour. I do want to say this. I have checked. So I have personally checked Russell's story out multiple ways, upside down and sideways. Here's a preacher, a teacher who did absolutely nothing wrong. These thugs come in and raided him in a black ops with no reason, took his guns illegally, seized his guns, took down his surveillance equipment, and again threatened other federal firearms licensors. And so it is time. Call your senators, call your representatives. Let's get his case in front of the president, in front of Bondi, and let's get him a pardon. And then let's go after these thugs and get them arrested and let them have a little taste of their own medicine. Russell, I appreciate you. I hope me and you get to fly out to Washington and get that pardon because I'm going with you.
And I told you, JJ, what I hope is I can get a picture with you and James Langford the day I get pardoned, because I hope that between me, maybe I'm that olive leaf that y'all can bridge the gap and say, hey, we're on the same team.
Well, I'll tell you what, if James will help you, I'll shut my mouth and I'll do, you know what I'm saying? I do just.
Now, Bobby, that'd be a miracle.
Well, it would be. You do know that is true.
Well, I think that I believe he'll look into it.
I do too.
I believe in the.
Hey, you guys need to join us on jj4ok.com, jj4ok.com. Guys, I appreciate both of you. We're already over time, so everybody call your senators, call your U.S. Congress people, help us out. Y'all have a blessed day.